On this episode of AV Week, using the World Cup to launch product, Sony goes after Dolby ATMOS and software-centric product development. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 357, recorded Wednesday, June 27th, 2018. The world is watching.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sure, because every voice matters.
And by Christie Digital. And by Harman International.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to talk about the news and information this week, we're doing this a little bit special, a little bit different. So I owe Miss Corey Schaefer something because it's 8 o'clock in the morning, my time, because I'm an idiot and I don't understand math. It is 6 a.m. on the West Coast. So thank you very much, Miss Corey Schaefer from QSC.
It's a pleasure to be here so bright and early.
I know. So I'll explain that in a few minutes. On the other side of the world, and this is why we're doing this so early, first and foremost, Mr. Neville Bounds from Feltec. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm very well, and I'm not complaining because it's just gone 2 o'clock in the afternoon here, so it's perfect for me.
All right, since we're doing time checks, the last gentleman here is Garish. Garish is from Grand Tech. So where are you, Garish, and what time is it there, I guess?
So, it's a pleasure to be here. It's 5 p.m. in the evening. And it's probably about 45 degrees outside, so I'm glad to be in the office.
And you're in Dubai right now. You're not in, because Grish has a couple different companies, so you're in Dubai, right?
Correct. Yes, I'm in Dubai.
All right, very good. And this may be the biggest time adjustment we've had in the 7 years we've done this. So let's do this real quick. Let's get the stories up and running. And first and foremost, not for nothing, but if you are a citizen of the globe, honestly, right now the World Cup is one of the biggest sports stories, at least. In the U.S., we don't have a team, so we all kind of choose our own. My second team didn't make it either, so I'm actually rooting for the English team, Neville. But it is the biggest. Every 4 years, the World Cup happens. It's huge. It's ginormous. Folks, come from all over the world to go to it. The story we're using, though, is from AV Magazine, and a Shenzhen-based company is actually using the World Cup as a product launch, quote unquote. A Shenzhen-based LED display technology company has held a product launch and customer training session in Moscow, timed to take place just before the opening ceremony of the World Cup. Corey, I'm going to start with you on this. You travel the world for QSC. You go to ISC typically every year. Events like that are not necessarily AV-centric or even technology-centric, does it make sense to go to where the people are, right? Go where there's a massive of audience and the world is watching, the media is watching. Does that make sense to go there and launch your product and do some customer stuff?
Well, when I read this, I just actually thought it was brilliant because obviously it's the most watched event in the world. Russia is an emerging market, as mentioned in the story, and it opened with the fact that they even sold the sample screen that they were, leveraging this launch on. So to be able to create demand and to show it in an event that most of the world is watching, I actually think it's brilliant because it creates that pull through. I mean, many times us manufacturers, we go to Grish and our Neville, our integrators, and we ask, we show you, and then we want you to bring it to the customer. But to be able to have a customer see it and watch it and do that pull through, I actually think is really brilliant. And again, in an emerging market, so not the typical markets we would do a launch in.
Yeah, Neville, Corey makes a really good point that Russia is still an emerging market. Is this something where you could, from an integrator standpoint, partner with or support a manufacturer who maybe comes to your town or is helping you trying to get into an emerging market or a new vertical?
Yeah, very much so, Tim. And of course, the problem we've got these days, and everybody's the same, I guess, we're all so busy when the manufacturers come to us. There's hardly anybody at the office because we're all out doing our jobs. But when there's a big event on in town like this, then it's absolutely relevant, especially when there's end user involved as well, and especially when there's high-end new technology being spoken about. So it's a superb opportunity. And I think this is going to set the tone for more of this kind of thing in the future.
All right, Girish, Neville makes a good point, setting the tone for this stuff in the future. What other events around the world? Obviously, the World Cup happens once every 4 years, so you obviously can't do a World Cup every year. But you have the Olympics, you have the World Cup, you have other high-profile sporting events, and other events that are not necessarily sports related. So whether it's in the Middle East, or whether it's in India or Asia, or even in EMEA. What other events do you think that would make sense for in both integrators and for manufacturers to, again, go where the people are?
Yeah. So the world's richest horse race happens in Dubai, right? That could be an exciting event. Yeah, the world's richest in terms of the prize money. That happens in Dubai. So yeah, and it's it's, of course, it's not comparable to the football, which is happening, the soccer. And I thought too that it's a very, very exciting time to do product launches, and these technologies are actually used in many of these facilities to watch these matches over the satellite or over the internet. In terms of streaming, so I honestly believe that they seize the opportunity to do this.
All right, very good. Next story up here comes to us from AV Interactive. Sony launches their Sonic Surf VR immersive spatial audio system. At InfoComm 2018, they introduced a suite, quote unquote, of spatial audio technology combined with new multi-channel speakers and specifically developed software designed to simulate placing, moving, and partitioning sounds in one space. Neville, I'll start with you on this. This sounds an awful lot to me like Dolby ATMOS, which, if you're not familiar with Dolby ATMOS, it's multi-channel. There's several speakers. It's designed to do spacing and movement and stuff like that. Two questions here, Neville. First of all, does it sound like Dolby ATMOS to you? Do you think this is Sony going after ATMOS? And secondly, I love Sony. Do not misunderstand. Don't send me emails on this. But is this one of those things where Sony is just kind of putting something out there like they have in the past to see if there's interest, and if there's not, they'll pull it back and go, oh, we never really did that?
Yeah, they've got to be careful they don't do a Me Too product here, haven't they? Yeah. Because there has been a bit of they have had a bit of previous form in this area, especially in video conferencing, I would say. This does feel like a bit of an Atmos alternative, shall we say? But actually, there's plenty of market for this stuff, and certainly in visitor centres, exhibition areas, tourist zones, this kind of stuff, I think, is a great opportunity. So I did actually go and see this, and it was impressive. And there's always more possibility worldwide to sell this kind of solution. Looks like, I didn't get a price point on it, but it looks as though, as long as you're dealing with the content properly and you've got a good way of making it all work, I think it could be a good solution. But yeah, but they could be testing the market. So it would be interesting to see whether this is a long-term investment for them, see how it goes.
Yeah, but where did you see the product? Was it at InfoComm or?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I wish I had seen it. I didn't see it there.
Yeah, it was impressive. I think, Neville, the reason you didn't see a price, because that's one of the other things that Sony is historic about doing, is at least in the first couple phases of kind of testing the market, they don't give a price. Figure out, they can, I guess they figure that out later. Girish, Neville mentioned that there's several markets for this, whether that's VR or that's an actual home theater, or possibly into movie, cinema displays and cinema installations. What other markets does it make sense for this to be looked at and considered, at least from a design standpoint? Obviously, it's not ready yet, so maybe look at something that's a year or two down the road.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to see it as well, and it was quite impressive. And I believe that from an integrator's point of view, that there's a lot of opportunity that will exist in the experience centers and in the museum arenas, and especially in the space kind of museums where they build experience centers to bring in visitors so that they can really get not only a visual treat, but a real audio treat as well, if that is properly integrated. And as I said, is it ready yet? But these are the opportunities that can be built over a period of time.
All right, Corey. Again, Corey works for QSC. When you guys start looking at products like this, because there's not for nothing, but QSC eventually will have to process this information. Is this something where, again, and not trying to bash Sony, but again, they have a history of kind of pushing things out there and seeing if there's availability. Do you guys wait until it's really available on the market to start having conversations with them, or is it something where, oh, hey, that looks cool, maybe we should start the conversation before they even put a price on it and start making it available?
No, I think because our development team, just isn't sitting around, with nothing to do. We typically wait till number one, we want to see the market adoption, and most importantly, we want to hear from our customers and hear what their questions and needs are. And honestly, our development team is incredibly agile about bringing features and functionality to product. I can tell you that I met with a client in April, and they had some issues about QSYS and some things that they wanted to have in that, and it's actually being adopted in a release at the end of June. So, I mean, that's how agile QSC can be and has been. On this, I actually feel like for the applications they're talking about, the experience centers, the museums, and so on, this would be an amazing technology to bring to the visitor. My history prior to joining QSC, I worked for a company where we offered individual headsets and things like that brought interpretation and tour guide, etc. And as a visitor to a museum, you just don't want to use something like that because of the sanitary issues. And if you are a museum and you're handing those out, you're concerned about getting those back and managing your inventory. So I feel like, if this were to come to market, they definitely would have customers for it.
Real quickly, Corey, I want to bring back something you said about your development team, how agile they are.
Yeah.
Is that honestly based on the fact that QSC and QSYS is moving more towards a software-based platform? You guys are able to say, oh, you know what, not being silly here, but it's just software, so we can kind of adjust things and then softly push it out. Is that because it's based on software as opposed to hardware-centric platforms?
100%, yes. And so we've got this group that is always focused. They're just looking at features and functionality via software. And often when customers are asking for things, you typically we don't just jump because one customer asked for it, but you get enough customers looking at it, and then you throw it over to this team. And they're like, I'm shocked at how often they're saying, yes, it's possible. Yes, it's doable, etc. And our challenge now is putting things in the software and having releases that are quarterly versus monthly or weekly, etc. And having these well-timed releases so that we can promote the changes in the software. But yeah, because it's a software platform, it allows us to be so much more agile.
All right, very good. Last story here actually comes to us from our friends over at AV Network. Happens to do with QSC. Full disclosure, I use a TouchMix. I don't use the TouchMix 30, which is what the story is about, but we use a TouchMix 16. We were on the road. If you happen to come by the AVNation studio at Infocom, you would have seen our TouchMix 16 there.
Awesome.
But you guys have come out with a new thing for the TouchMix 30, the TouchMix 30 Pro. It's automatic microphone mixing, quote unquote. The TouchMix Pro automatic microphone mixing fixture is a component of the latest firmware upgrade for the TouchMix Pro, but it offers auto mix functionality, delivering advanced gain sharing capabilities to audio professionals. Corey, simple question here: why is that important? Why is auto mixing of microphones important?
Boy, the vertical that we're after with the TouchMix Pro is, the many things listed there, which, one would be corporate events, panel discussion, things like that, and be able to have the microphones adjust for free-flowing discussion in something like that is a really great feature. And I am going to gravitate a bit to software. The fact that users have purchased this product and then have this feature delivered to them via software, that really is the mode and direction of QSC. meaning we try to do as much as we can in software and have that be something downloadable so that if a customer invests in this solution, it serves them well over time as we develop new features and functionality. So, I mean, ideally, that's what we feel we want the customer to be served well over time, not just develop a new box, a new, connector on the back, and they have to purchase a whole new product.
Yeah, real quickly about that, both from the TouchMix side, and we also use Audio Matrix Mix as well. And in both of those products, we've seen functionality increase over the last 2 years based on your software development and firmware pushes out. Neville, from an integrator standpoint, getting something like this and being able to sell it or either use it in your own productions, how important is it that they're able to, like Corey said, from a software standpoint, continually update and make improvements to that product?
Yeah, I think it's essential, actually, Tim. And we're seeing this a lot, aren't we, across the board with people just downloading license keys or firmware updates. It has to be the way that the platform works, because as the manufacturers come out with more and more functionality, and they're not just coming out with new functionality every 3 or 4 years where you might want to buy a new piece of hardware. They're coming out with it, as Corey said, quarterly or even more than that possibly. So actually the firmware updatability for this kind of thing is really important, and it can bring a whole load of extra functionality to a platform which has still got 3, 4, 5 years of life left in it.
Let me ask you this, Neville, and Girish, I'm going to ask you the same question. When it comes to selling products, though, how do you sell a product then that may or may not have functionality, or maybe you've heard from the manufacturer in the background? You can tell your customer, look, you know what, it doesn't have this yet, but we're being told or we're being promised in 6 months or a year it does. Is there any sort of I don't know, hesitation or caveats you have to put when you're dealing with your customers and go, you know what, you need to buy this now because in X amount of months or years, it's going to have this and you're going to love that?
Yeah, it's a very difficult one to call. And I think you've got to be really careful with those sort of conversations because with the greatest respect to Corey and all the manufacturers out there, you never quite know when this stuff's going to come off the line. And, sometimes it's 6 months and sometimes it's a year and sometimes it's 2 years and sometimes it never
sometimes, I was just going to say, and sometimes it's never.
Yeah, so I think some careful wording and actually managing everybody's expectations here. I think it'd be wrong to buy a product on the basis that something might come in 6 months' time. But I think in general terms, the manufacturers that we're speaking to, and QSC are one of them, they're always listening for new ideas, new information, and also feeding back to us. What sort of functionality would you like? And those sort of conversations are very valuable indeed.
Yeah, Girish, that actually would be my next question to you is what is the communication system like? Whether it's QSC or it's another manufacturer, when you're going, okay, can we get this? What is that communication like, and then how do you translate that again back to your customers?
Yeah, so I couldn't agree more with Neville. So you got to be really, really careful in communicating what the expectations are, and then be able to set the expectations right, with the customers, and especially when you commit something, it's almost like a kid in a candy store. The customer wants everything, right? So it's really very, very important to set that expectation, and then be able to drive that from there. So it's to me, yes. So what we tend to do is ideally we tend to wait for a couple of good case studies so that we basically de-risk that. Of course, there are always early adopters, but in an emerging market like ours, we always tend to wait for a couple of good case studies so that we can start proposing this from an integrator's point of view.
All right, very interesting. I actually one last question here, guys, as we wrap up here. All three of you were at Infocom this year. Girish was at Infocom, Neville was Infocom, and obviously Corey with QSC. But Girish and Neville, I want to get your take because both of you also attend ISE. Actually, so does Corey, and so do I. But Girish, I want to start with you on this. Can you kind of give folks who have been maybe only to Infocom or maybe only to ISE? I'm not asking you to say one is better than the other, but just a comparison contrast between the two and benefits of you coming from not only in India but also from Dubai for coming to the show here in the States.
Yeah, we got to be staying update with every kind of information which is available. but for the 23 hours of flying to get in the United States. Rest everything is really, really good. For us, both these shows are important, and we tend to represent these. But what I feel is the Infocom in the US is more US centric, which is a good thing, not a bad thing, because a lot of new technology. So I was asked a question some time ago. In an emerging market, do we follow a matured market? And the answer is yes. So some of the new installations that happens in the United States or in Europe or in the UK, which has gone through this, and then we bring it back into our markets. So for us, it's extremely important to be present and be aware. I'm not definitely going to put one against each other. Both of these shows are important. Yeah.
Rich, do you see things at Infocom that you don't see at ISE?
Not really, so I do see them at both locations, but in fact, I see more things in ISE than at the Infocom.
Oh, got it.
Neville, same kind of question to you is what was your experience as someone coming from the UK coming to Vegas this year?
Yeah, it's always great on the West Coast, apart from the fact it was a little bit too hot. But from the show point of view, I think it was one of the best Infocoms ever. From my point of view, the aisles are so much wider. There's obviously not so many halls, so you can actually bump into people quite regularly. And that's something which is, ISE has become a problem in a sense that obviously it's a 45-minute flight for me to go to Amsterdam, so it's perfect. But actually, a lot of people have said to me, Nev, were you actually there? And I went, yeah, I was there the whole week, and you would never bump into people. That's not the same for Infocom at all. And I also think being on the West Coast every 2 years, that's a big advantage for the Asia Pacific region. Certainly people from Australia and New Zealand, so you get a lot more people coming from there. They're very different shows actually, and the vibe is certainly different. Both shows, it'd be difficult to say that one was better than the other, but I must say my Infocom experience this year was particularly good, I thought.
All right, very good. Ms. Schaefer, if you want to weigh in on either one, because as you and I are the Americans here, going over to ISE, your experience as a manufacturer and exhibitor going to both.
I would say my experience is at ISE, although it's a larger show, as a manufacturer, I feel that I get more time with each visitor that comes. So, you're sitting down, you're having coffee, you're actually having really great dialogue. I mean, so much more time. I feel that at the Infocom show, it's, people are just in a big rush to get to the next, and the next, and the next. And I actually would love to see Infocom add another day, because I just felt, I know people are going to hate me, but I just feel that there's so much. I mean, with Tide, Center Stage, there's just so much to see. And quite frankly, this year, I just didn't get to see it.
Yeah. No, and you were not the first nor the last person to say that Infocom should go to 4 days. So, every year, and I will get the conversation with the folks there at AVIXA, and that's one of the most common questions they say that they've gotten is the two questions is when are you going to settle on one city? They're not.
Right.
When to go to 4 days, and that's a continual conversation. And honestly, according to AVIXA, that's a conversation they have, number one with their manufacturers, the exhibitors, and number two with obviously the stakeholders in the industry. So
they send out a survey at the end of the conference asking, and I did put that on there, add another day.
All right. That's going to do it for us, folks. Thanks so much. Miss Corey Schaefer from QSC, thank you again for getting up early and hanging out with us.
Anytime.
How do people find you and or QSC?
So QSC.com, Corey Schaefer, you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. And then also at QSC, we have a big YouTube channel. So again, just look at QSC on YouTube, a lot of really great videos there. And find QSC on all the social media, Facebook. We have many Facebook groups, one on QSys, one on TouchMix, etc. Get a lot of great customer feedback there. So look for QSC all over social, and look for Corey Schaefer all over social.
All right, very good. Mr. Neville, thank you, sir.
You're very welcome. Yep. You can find me at Feltech, feltech.co.uk. We're a systems integrator for broadcast and audio-visual systems just north of London. On Twitter, I'm at nevtech27. And in my spare time, if I had some still, I do an aviation podcast every Friday with two of my colleagues, and that's at planetalkinguk.com.
Yeah, if you're watching the video, that's why Neville's studio looks better than mine. He has nice soundproofing behind him. So, Girish, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. How do people find you or Grantech?
Well, thank you for having me here. You can find me at grantech.com, which is GRANTEQ.com, and my Twitter is @Girish Narayanan. And it's very exciting to be here, and that since it's very coincidental, we are actually at the commissioning stage of a very large auditorium using all QSE here in the United Arab Emirates, right?
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Let me know how it goes.
Yes. I have actually seen some stuff of it. And it's very exciting. It's for a very large university right here. So. Yeah, so it's a really exciting time for us.
All right, very good. Well, thank you all so much. Again, 5 o'clock in the afternoon for Grish and 6 a.m. for Corey, and it's been fascinating for me. So thank you all so much. Don't follow me on the Twitters or social media, but go by the website if you would, please, avnation.tv. AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. While you're there, please check out our underwriter section. These are the folks who help us financially, who support us and help us do AVWeek, and go to Infocom. And in about 2 or 3 months' time, we'll hit Cedia from San Diego. So all that and more at avnation.tv. AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. It's all the time we have for AV Week.